Ancient Earth History, Part 2, by guest author, November 14, 2021. Guest article by Robert Dawson. Excerpt from Contact Report 781.
Also that historians often commit themselves to false records, and then claim that everything was so-and-so in ancient times, although it is so untrue, like false assumptions by archaeologists that, for example, something was built in such and such a way, etc. That should also be discussed once in a while, because sometimes such nonsense is said and told that it makes your hat go up.
And the story of our planet Earth is full of historical gaps and false interpretations, thereby denying a complete understanding of who we really are and where we are heading. The contact notes of the conversations between Billy Meier and the extraterrestrials, known as the Plejarans, whose ancestors share a common historical past with that of Earthman's, provides key information to correct these falsehoods and misinterpretations, and it begins with the acceptance of the reality of our extraterrestrials. This series of articles will present corroborating archaeological evidence to the historical information provided by Billy Meier. Part 2 continues where Part 1 https://theyflyblog. Com 2021-10 Ancient Earth History Part 1/left off. This magnificently large ancient site resembling an amphitheater with its perfectly centered concentric circles is located in the Nazca region at Meier, Peru. However, its purpose is far from entertainment. It is actually a very clever irrigation system with water designed to flow at different levels. Another picture of the garden terraces at Meier taken at ground level shows a channel of water flowing at the base of the stone retaining wall. The stones used around the walls absorbed heat from the sun during the day, so crops would not be burned. During the nighttime, the walls conversely radiated the heat and stabilized the temperature of the cold nighttime air. Because the weather in Peru can be rather unstable, this method allowed to grow crops even in times of drought. Although its construction is attributed to the Incas, the method of rammed earth and stone retaining walls bears an uncanny resemblance to the construction of the Puquios, the underground hydraulic system, also in Peru, and discussed at the end of Part 1. Its original builders are unknown. However, it can be explained by the settlement of extraterrestrials in that region, as mentioned in the Contact Report 69. At one of the ancient water channels at Tipon, Peru, that have amazingly survived for thousands of years and are still operable today. The Egyptians also built channels for irrigation in similar fashion as shown in this artist's depiction. Both ancient Egyptians and ancient Americans practiced mummification. The mummified body of Egyptian Queen Tai enclosed in a glass display. DNA testing has shown her to be the grandmother of the Egyptian boy king Tutankhamun. The blackish darkening of her skin is associated with plant chemicals used as part of the mummification process. A side view is shown of her later below. A photograph of a mummy from Puruchuco Huacorones, a large ancient Inca cemetery on the outskirts of Lima, which was first excavated in 1999. This mummy, nicknamed La Señorita, was buried with her child, not shown. The photograph shows that she had white skin and wavy reddish-brown hair. Unlike Egyptian mummies that used plant chemical preparations which darkened the skin, these mummies were naturally prepared with tight wrappings and extremely dry air, and with no discoloration of skin tones. Another mummy of a woman with red or reddish-brown hair and white skin. The age of these two female mummies predates any known European contacts in the Americas. Photograph of two mummified heads found at Pachacamac, a city of the Yixma culture, which existed along the central coast of Peru to the south of Lima. Both of the heads have white skin. The head on the left has brown hair. The head on the right has blonde hair. The Gringuito. Descendants of the Chachapoyas still preserve some of the genotype and phenotype of the white gods of ancient Peru and Chile. Their autosomal DNA is between 10% and 50% European, and some of them have Y chromosomes belonging to haplogroup R1b. As the photographs above show, many of them have features like fair skin, blonde and red hair, blue eyes and freckles, which are typical of modern Northern Europeans, and not at all typical of modern Southern Europeans like Spaniards, who usually have brown eyes and brown or black hair. Source: More Proof of Whites in Ancient Peru and Chile, by Genetiker. And this genetic phenomenon cannot be explained with the traditionally accepted history of Earth, but is easily understood with the information provided in the contact reports of Billy Meier.
Excerpt from Contact Report 721.
And when the last Plejarans immigration community came to Earth around 500 years ago, it happened in a completely secret way, because since 389,000 years earlier, other extraterrestrials had come to Earth and had settled far and wide on all continents, above all, the long-skulled ones.
This is a three-dimensional CT image of the head skull of the mummified body of the Egyptian boy king, Tutankhamun, and shows him to be a long skull. This picture appears in the book, Scanning the Pharaohs, CT Imaging of the New Kingdom, Royal Mummies, by Zahi Hawass and Zahar Salim, Oxford University Press, 2016. The foreword to the book claims, "This is the first fully comprehensive treatment to appear in print," referring to the scientific forensic examination of Egyptian royal mummies. And this is a three-dimensional CT image of the skull of another mummy belonging to Egyptian royalty, and is simply identified as KV55 in the same book by Zahi Hawass. This is one of the mummified heads found at the Paracas, Peru site discussed in Part 1 of this series. The skull has dark reddish-brown hair. And this is one of the Paracas skulls which preserved its hair but lost its facial skin. The color of the hair is a reddish-brown. The elongated skulls of Paracas in Peru caused a stir in 2014 when a geneticist that carried out preliminary DNA testing reported that they have mitochondrial DNA with mutations unknown in any human, primate, or animal known so far. Additional DNA testing completed in 2016 show them to be a match with European and Middle Eastern origins. And the bone powder from the most elongated skull tested came back as T2b, which originates in Mesopotamia, now called Syria, essentially the heart of the Fertile Crescent. These surprising results change the known history about how the Americas were populated. This is a side view of the mummified body of Egyptian Queen Tai, the grandmother of Tutankhamun, whose top front view is shown earlier in this article. Despite the abundant hair, it can be readily determined that she was one of the extraterrestrials known as long skulls. In his book, Scanning the Pharaohs, Zahi Hawass suggests that the darkening of the skin was a consequence of the chemical preparations used as a part of the mummification process. Different forms of mummification processes were used in ancient Egypt over its long history. One was a natural form, and others involved the use of embalming oils made from conifer resin and aromatic plant extracts. The picture shows there is a white orbital circle around her eye area, where it had been covered with gauze and did not receive the plant chemical treatment. This tint of color around her eyes is thought to be closer to the true color of her original overall skin. A photograph of the mummified body of Tutankhamun taken after removal of the linen wrappings. After examination, Tutankhamun's mummy was later rewrapped and returned to its tomb where it now rests. The photograph shows that the boy king was a long skull. This is a replica of the mummified body of Tutankhamun put on public display in New York City as part of a King Tut Antiquities tour. The replica was made to show the skin at a much lighter shade. Then ancient Egypt had a society with a very diverse ethnic composition. The images above are the ancient Egyptians' own depictions of themselves, which are from murals illustrating the Book of Gates in the tomb of Pharaoh Seti I, who ruled Egypt from 1290 to 1279 BC. It does not, however, show Egyptian royalty. The first image shows, from bottom to top and from left to right, Horus, 4 Egyptians, 4 Semites, 4 Nubians, and 4 Libyans. The Nubians are clearly Negroid, while the Egyptians are clearly Caucasoid. The Libyans look more like modern Northern Europeans than modern Northwest Africans. These Libyans will be discussed further in Part 3 of this series, in a discussion of the white gods that appear in the myths and legends of various indigenous American cultures. They are wearing a plumed feather headpiece and a robe or skirt-like clothing. The ancient American god Quetzalcoatl, feathered serpent or plumed serpent, is described and depicted in art as wearing a feathered plume headpiece and wearing a rope or skirt. He is also described as being white-skinned, having a beard, and according to the Billy Meier contact notes, he was an extraterrestrial from Egypt on a special mission to the Americas. In the 17th century, Ixtlilxochitl, a descendant of Aztec royalty and historian of the Nahua people, wrote, "Quetzalcoatl, in its literal sense, means serpent of precious feathers, but in the allegorical sense, wisest of men." The second image shows, from left to right, 4 Libyans, a Nubian, a Semite, and an Egyptian.
A source K equals 14 admixture analysis of ancient Egyptian genomes by Genetiker.
Both ancient Egyptians and ancient Americans had advanced medical skill and performed surgery. A stone engraving of medical surgical instruments used by the ancient Egyptians is almost identical to the modern surgical instruments used today, shown to the right. A photograph taken of an Inca skull which shows that it had received brain surgery. Paul Broca, an iconic neuroscientist and neurosurgeon, hypothesized that these skull trepanations used by the ancients were used to treat convulsions in infants. In the end, many scientists have concluded that the trepanations were performed to drain epidural hematomas. Prehistoric physicians in Egypt had an impressive knowledge of the human body and its inner workings, as well as the treatment of illness and disease. Egyptian medical papyri documented many diagnostics and medical achievements we still use today. The Egyptians' medicine reached a very high standard, and its reputation spread to neighboring countries. Especially complementary medicine like herbal medicine played a key role in society. Ancient Egyptian scrolls document natural herbs and holistic medicine that saved lives and cured disease. A proof comes from burial sites, tombs and underground temples where archaeologists have found extensive sets of medical documents and scrolls, including the Ebers Papyrus, the Edwin Smith Papyrus, the Hearst Papyrus, and the London Medical Papyrus, which contained the earliest documented awareness of tumors. The papyrus actually contains a treatise on the heart, which recognizes the heart as the center of the blood supply, with vessels attached. Homer even wrote in the Odyssey, "In Egypt, the men are more skilled in medicine than any of humankind, and the Egyptians were skilled in medicine more than any other art." Ancient etched stones discovered in Ica, Peru depict medical surgery including a heart transplant.
Both the ancient Egyptian and Peruvian civilizations are well known for their pioneering work in medicine and architecture. Their accomplishments in these areas have been well documented in the walls of uncovered tombs and discovered papyrus. Both civilizations independently pioneered the art of neurosurgery with different techniques and approaches. We recognize and appreciate the brilliance of these ancient cultures in mastering the medicinal and architectural sciences.
Source: Is there a connection between medicine and architecture in ancient Egypt and Peru? By K. Rafael W. Clifton, Gabriela C. Quinones, Shashwat Tripathi, Aquinones Hinojosa, published 2019.
Both ancient Egyptians and ancient Americans at different periods shared an architectural style. A comparison of styles: to the left, Huiracocha Temple, near Cusco, Peru, and to the right, Temple of Horus, Edfu, Egypt, circa 57 BC. A comparison of styles: to the left, Temple of Queen Hatshepsut near Luxor, Egypt, and to the right, pre-Inca stone building near Cusco, Peru. Both ancient Egyptians and ancient Americans used advanced technology in stonework. In the middle part of the Temple of the Sun, Coricancha, Cusco, Peru, is a doorway with many hollows, reliefs, etc. It is in direct alignment to the sunrise on the winter solstice. In this portal, the perfection in the cut of the stone stands out, which seems to have been cut by a powerful diamond, keeping the edges intact, without the need for additional polishing. The half-round groove channeling seen here is similar to the groove channeling found in rocks at Abu Sir, Egypt, shown in the picture to the right of it. The precision cutting found in stones at Abu Sir, Egypt, one of the oldest known ancient Egyptian archaeological sites. Groove channeling is observed that is remarkably similar to that found at ancient sites in Peru. In this example, we see several half-round channels within a much larger half-round channel. A precision drill holes found in stone at ancient ruins, Abu Sir, Egypt. The precision drill holes are found in stones at various ancient sites in Peru. Both ancient Egyptians and ancient Americans used precision stoneworking techniques. The majestic and sprawling archaeological site at Sacsayhuaman, Peru. And in a detailed area of one of the stone walls, we see the stones fitted, to come together at 3 angles, not once but multiple times, an almost unbelievable feat, and probably cannot be reproduced today. Near Cusco, 3 perfectly aligned window openings naturally increased airflow with cooling effects within living spaces using the Venturi effect. An example of the incredible stonework at Sacsayhuaman, Peru. The large stone in the center has a unique 7-angle configuration with all adjacent stones around it fitting perfectly. A close-up detail of stonework at Sacsayhuaman shows evidence of a heating process such as vitrification. Examples of precision stone cutting. To the left, from Abu Sir, Egypt, and the remaining from 3 separate ancient sites in Peru.
Excerpt from Contact R69.
The similar events took place in the areas you call Pisco in Peru, Nazca in Peru, and Sacsayhuaman, Cusco, Peru, because the same giants had settled there.
In July 2012, the Ministry of Culture of Peru invited a group of Russian geophysicists to perform a research on the archaeological complex Sacsayhuaman. In the course of this investigation, interesting historical and archaeological data was collected and analyzed. The official research is, however, available only from the laboratory of the Institute of Tectonics and Geophysics of FIB-RAS in Khabarovsk, where the most exhaustive set of specimens were delivered.
Their conclusions.
The Sacsayhuaman construction material is evidently represented by the organogenic and fine-grained limestone with no organic residues and with a low amount of their fragments. The experts at ITAG, Institute of Tectonics and Geophysics, suggest that the fine-grained limestone may be an artificial material produced with unknown technologies. This statement is presented in the official summary. This should be repeated: fine crystalline limestone with no tracks of organic residues. It is composed of evenly distributed calcite microcrystals of the size of 10 microns. The presence of calcite was confirmed by the X-ray phase analysis. The presence of calcite microcrystals is profoundly significant, as they are associated with piezoelectricity in crystals and even in the human body, specifically the pineal gland.
The complex texture structure of the microcrystals in the pineal gland may lead to possible piezoelectricity, as is the case with autoconia. It is believed that the presence of 2 different crystalline compounds in the pineal gland is biologically significant, suggesting 2 entirely different mechanisms of formation and biological functions. Studies directed toward the elucidation of the formation and functions and possible interaction with external electromagnetic fields are currently in progress.
Source: calcite microcrystals in the pineal gland of the human brain. First Physical and Chemical Studies by Simon Baconier, Sidney B. Lang, Maria Polomska, Bozena Hiltzer, Gary Berkovich, Guilia Meshulam, Department of Chemical Engineering, Ben-Gurion University of the Negev.
As studies of the calcite microcrystals found in the pineal gland with external electromagnetic fields are currently in progress. Billy Meier explains in FIGU Special Bulletin #38 that the pineal gland is the sense organ pertaining to the perception, the human's 7th sense, and through meditative practice, to allow enough energy to flow through the pineal gland's area of the brain and through the pineal gland itself, because it then becomes possible that the fine material electromagnetic fields which surround the human will be consciously perceived. Both ancient Egyptians and ancient Americans had awareness of the third eye. Egyptian mummy coffin. An Olmec head figurine. The Egyptian tablet engraving. A Mayan mask of Tlaloc 300, 200 BCE jade. Aztec skull inlaid with turquoise mosaics, with golden eyes and jade ornaments on the forehead. A Olmec mask with jewel inlay at forehead.
Article by Robert Dawson.